when I'm up there and running well. So welcome everyone back to the community of learning. I am so excited to have everyone back and thankful for my team to cover July. I had a bit of a short medical leave and I'm all good. Well, kind of all good. Anyways, I'm on my way. But welcome back to September. And again, thank you so much for everybody who joined in July. Any updates from July at all, Andy? Any updates to share?
Uh, oh, you're asking me to think.
Oh no, sorry.
I mean, we're working on many projects. Our application to become a charity is under. We got a caseworker now that's been submitted. So hopefully within the next few months that status should be awarded. We're in the process of uh, developing the webinars for the November. I think it's 5th, 12th, and 19th.
Yeah.
And there's 2 university RPL sessions already. I think it's September. I can't remember what the dates. I'll be honest. I apologize.
That's
Those
okay.
are those are free sessions. We're working on putting investigating, starting to work on updating the manual. So lots of things in the pipeline.
And just
Perfect.
to say, the topic of the webinars for this fall series is RPL and career development. So for all the career development folk, it's for you that we're highlighting this.
Yeah, we're also
Exciting.
making liaisons, like doing memorandums of understanding with other organizations to try and create synergies within the communities. Uh, Susan, any update on the True CAPLA thing, or that can be shared, or any note, anything on that? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. Sorry, I had too many screens going there. Yeah, I was going to share this in the meeting tomorrow, but I can sadly share it here. TRU has had a lot of leadership changes in the last few months. That combined with the budget cuts has meant that some of the initial plans that we had, one of the ones we were really excited about was to start developing a business where we give advice to other schools, institutions, organizations looking to start or grow their prior learning programs. And with the new leadership at TRU, they've asked us to not do that. And so that's what we've agreed to. So um, I thought it was an excellent idea. I was excited to work with CAPLA on this and to use that expertise. Um, it could happen in other shapes or forms, but for now, we're going to pause it. On that note, I'm going to do a really odd plug. Dr. Nan Travers retires officially on Friday, and I'm sure many of you know Dr. Nan Travers. We reached out to many of you to give her our congratulations card that we did virtually, an opportunity for people to share a few words about the impact she's had on them. And I know she's retiring from SUNY Empire, but she is still going to be very involved in prior learning, recognition, validation. And I know she's coming to do a BC Prior Learning Action Network webinar in October for us. So if you heard she's retired, she is, but she is still heavily in this field and more available for consulting work if anybody's looking for some world-renowned expertise.
Wonderful.
Nan is
Okay.
coming epic.
Thank you
Yeah.
for that, Susan. I think that's enough of the updates. If anybody ever
Yeah,
has any questions,
perfect.
just email me. Hey Brown, I'll put my email in the. You can do
Chat.
info@capla.ca, or I'll put my actual email in the chat. Over to you, Liz.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, that is it for me. And over to Serge. And I want to thank him very much and Don Passant as well for bringing Serge's information to us here at the Community of Learning to share. I was not lucky enough to go to the conference where I understand he did a keynote presentation, so I am thrilled to have us join today. I will stop my sharing and hand it over to him to share away.
Okay, do you see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay, so I need to. Okay, so thank you very much for welcoming me to present the work doing on the recognition practices occupational framework. It's the first time I do the presentation, so be patient with me. Oh, not be patient because I'll be very long. I'll try to do it in less than 15 minutes. But I think it's important to understand where all this come from. So the title is Recognition Function, the Missing Link. And you can interpret the missing link in two ways. One way is recognition is a missing link, or there is a missing link in order to perform proper recognition. So the first thing is where is the recognition function? Recognition function is everywhere. It's present in gestures of appreciation, performance review, certification, rituals, and yet nowhere explicitly defined or coordinated. There is no dedicated place to connect the dots between individual contributions, collective achievements, and institutional policies. The result is that recognition remains fragmented, powerful in moments, but lacking the structure that would allow it to fully play its role as a connective tissue of organizations and societies. So the second interpretation is there are things missing for recognition to exist properly. Too often recognition is reduced to formal validation, diploma, certificate, or to reward mechanisms like bonuses, awards. And at the policy level, the focus is dominated by the design of micro-credentials or open badges. These instruments are not unimportant. They can make recognition visible, portable, and shareable, but they are only byproducts of recognition, not recognition itself. And it's never good practice to design a system for its byproducts. Just as we would not design an economic system around receipts, we should not design recognition systems around credentials. What is missing is a link between the context of recognition, micro for the individual, meso-organizational, and macro-societal, and the link between the modalities of recognition, informal, semi-formal, and formal. Without these connections, recognition remains fragmented. A badge here, a policy there, a thank you in passing. What we need is recognition function that weaves these fragments into a coherent ecosystem, connecting everyday practices to organizational cultures and organizational cultures to broader frameworks and policies. This is a missing link within the recognition function, and why we need a framework to define, professionalize, and sustain it. This slide illustrates the journey we are on, from the Declaration of Paris on the equality of recognitions, a political and ethical statement affirming that recognition is a fundamental human practice and that everyone has the power to recognize. It was a collective moment signed by many, signaling a cultural shift. Recognition must be opened up, shared, and made visible. And now we are at the stage of the development of concrete frameworks and instruments. AFNOR, the French chapter of the International Standard Organization, is working on a standard for open recognition with the objective to give organization a structured but non-prescriptive guide. The Open Recognition Manifesto, which expands the vision and calls for action, and the object of today, the Recognition Practices Occupational Framework, which focuses on the professionalization of recognition roles and functions. Together, these initiatives are moving us from a declaration of intent to a framework for action, from shared principles to structured practices, from inspiration to implementation. If the general purpose of recognition function is to empower individuals, groups, and organizations across all recognition contexts and modalities, the question is, how do we make this purpose actionable? To answer this, we went deeper into a functional analysis. We started by identifying the key purposes of recognition in organizations and communities. Then we broke these down into functions, the essential building blocks of recognition practice. And each function was then translated into competence areas and activities, providing clarity on what recognition practitioners actually do. The result is the beginning of a structured framework, a map of recognition practices that show how the recognition function can be implemented, professionalized, and connected across micro, meso, and macro contexts. This analysis is what allows us to move from principles to practice and from intent to implementation. And what you can see here, the table with the three contexts, micro, meso, and macro, and informal, semi-formal, and formal modalities of recognition. This is the actual recognition space. And until now, we tend to be focused on the upper right corner, macro-formal. Even if you read what the UNESCO has in terms of policy, what they call recognition, validation, and accreditation, the three definitions are totally make a connection to formal recognition. Recognition is formal recognition by the state. So UNESCO has not got the idea that informal and semi-formal recognition has any value. So, and we identified a few core functions, but this is the very, very beginning. So basically activate individual recognition, facilitate recognition in communities, ensure legibility and value, etc., etc. And I'll stop here, spend a bit of time on this slide because it really shows what are the different actors and the connection between the informal, semi-formal, and formal modalities of recognition. And the vocabulary we start using. In terms, with the idea that you can have formal recognition at the macro, meso, and micro level. Until now, we think that formal recognition is at the macro level. It is the certificate, the diploma, the qualifications. But you can have certification at the meso and micro level as well. So that's why we have this vocabulary now, suggestion of vocabulary, which can be discussed, to say that the informal, the verbs we'll use is to value, to endorse, to approve. Semi-formal is about to validate, to attest, to credit. And for the formal recognition, to accredit, certify, and license. We can discuss this, but I think it is interesting to use different verbs, different concepts, when it is about informal, semi-formal, and formal. So the idea of validate, for example, that means there is something to validate. It is something which is not immediate validation. It needs a bit of reflection. While to say thank you doesn't require any reflection. So at the macro level, recognition is rooted in everyday gestures. At the meso level, it is structured around the statement of competence, certificates, and recognition becomes more collective and visible. At the macro level, recognition carries regulatory weight and public legitimacy. This table is horrible because there is much too much text, but I'm going to go into each section. So it is very important when we define a recognition ecosystem to take into consideration the macro, meso, and micro level all together. If you focus just on the macro level and you forget the meso and the micro, or the other way around, you miss something. It is really the articulation of these contexts of recognition that are important. So even when you think at the macro level, you need to consider the macro level. You need to enable each individual to feel legitimate, visible, and valued in their learning experiences and contribution. And that happens at the macro level. It doesn't have to be through a certificate or a diploma to feel legitimate, visible, and valued. At the meso level is to foster collective recognition dynamics that strengthen cooperation, trust, and learning within communities, organizations, and networks. And at the macro level, it is to support systemic dynamics of recognition that foster a just, inclusive, and learning-oriented society. And you see, in this table, in terms of purpose, the macro level enables the meso level, which enables the micro level. So the current is bottom up and top down. There is a communication in both directions. This is this dual communication which is important to implement when you want to develop a proper and open recognition system. So what you look in terms of impact, at the macro level, you're looking for social cohesion, inclusion, cognitive justice, equity, meso cooperation, trust, commitment, macro emancipation, empowerment, identity building, motivation. So there are different impact you can measure in terms of recognition at the micro, meso, and macro level. And the key functions, it's just a start, but structure and sustain a distributed, inclusive, and interoperable recognition infrastructure. So at the macro level, we have a responsibility to create, to provide infrastructure, you could say the recognition highways, and also at the meso and micro level. So an example of functions you can see here. At the macro level, develop an open and evolving recognition frameworks and policies. Okay, we can discuss that. I'll give you the link to the document if you don't have it already, and you will be able to go through it. So I think what is quite unique, and maybe I'm wrong here, is to focus on the macro, meso, and micro level and the interconnection between them. Too often, but if I look at most of the approaches for, if I take France with validation des acquis de l'expérience, it is at the macro level uniquely that it is designed. There is no provision at all for recognition at the meso or micro level. Maybe at the meso level a bit, but not very clear what is called with collective recognition, but it is very embryonic. So we need to look at these three levels simultaneously when you build an ecosystem, a recognition ecosystem. And also, we need to think in terms of quality assurance. The main principle is clear. QA must serve practices, not control them. Too often, quality assurance frameworks are designed for formal systems, and they're imposed downward, which is flattening or even suffocating the diversity of recognition practices. What we propose here is a differentiated quality assurance adapted to each modality of recognition. For informal recognition, the markers of quality are authenticity, reciprocity, trustworthiness. What matters is that recognitions are genuine, situated, and grounded in mutual trust. We don't need forms or audits. We need sincerity and relational integrity. For semi-formal recognition, quality comes from the participatory design, transparency, and collective validation. These practices are often co-created by communities. And the test of quality is whether they remain visible, adaptable, and fair. For formal recognition, quality assurance naturally involves standards, consistency, accountability, auditability. Here, comparability and compliance with shared frameworks are important, but they should not erase the richness of informal and semi-formal practices. The key message is that each modality must have its own quality assurance logic. Instead of forcing all practices into a single mold, we need to make their quality visible on their own terms. This is what opens the door to trust and interoperability without homogenization. And of course, if we think in terms of developing the recognition function, it will develop new roles. The first term I used was embedded recognition practitioner. Each organization, even if you think in terms of formal recognition, you could have, and it happens, in fact, in some recognition system to have qualified assessors within organization that will contribute to the delivery of qualifications. I remember that when I was working with national vocational qualifications in the 90s. So the idea of embedded recognition practitioner is not new, but it is thought when it exists, it's not very common, but it exists, it is in recognition to formal qualification most of the time. But you can think about an embedded recognition practitioner which is connected to the local recognition practice within a community. You can have recognition officer, chief recognition officer being at the board. Recognition ecosystem designer, and all these new roles that could emerge when we think about recognition as a function. And so, and I've almost finished here, and I would like to share with you this reflection that recognition connects what life might scatter, from gestures to stories, from communities to policies. Recognition pathways transform isolated moments into a shared journey of meaning and belonging. Recognition is not the missing link. It is a link that makes everything else connect. And what connects us most deeply are our recognition pathways, the traces of our lived experiences, the gestures we receive and offer, the validations that travel with us across our lives. A recognition pathway is not a straight line. It is a thread that weaves together the informal, the semi-formal, and the formal. It links the micro gestures of everyday life with the mesodynamics of organizations and the macro frameworks of society. When these pathways are visible and interconnected, they allow us to carry our stories, our contributions, and our identities from one context to another. They are what enable recognition to move with us through learning, through work, through community engagements, through transitions. So the task before us is not simply to create credentials or frameworks, but to design living recognition pathways that connect our experiences and make visible the richness of who we are as individuals, as communities, and as society. Thank you. And here you have the QR code, and I give in the chat the links to EPIC, where all this will be presented, the link to the recognition framework and the Open Recognition Manifesto that was mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing. I would love to welcome questions directly if everyone is okay with that. And Andy, if I have your Grand Poobah approval, I feel like Serge, I have such frantic notes here and have so many questions, but I know my peers do too. So if you guys don't mind to open up the mic and ask, that would be awesome.
Hello.
Should I stop the recording on this bit though?
What do you think?
Does anybody have a problem with keeping the questions recorded?
I
think it's helpful to keep them recorded if that's
sure.
okay with
I just wanted to ask for transparency.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is a little nerdy question partway through. Serge, you said semi-formal instead of non-formal. Can you sort of expand on why you do that? Why you distinguish those?
I never liked, there is a definition for formal, non-formal, and informal learning. I always dislike the non-formal because how do you make the distinction between non-formal and informal? So in fact, I prefer to use formal, semi-formal because there is a bit of formalization. You need a bit of formalization to have something yes, semi-formal. Sorry, it's kind of a tautology, but
so it's less baggage attached. People might think they know what non-formal is. Semi-formal is kind of like it's an in-between word, basically.
Yes, it's in between. Yes, because there is always a formalization. When you send a postcard to your grandmother, it is a way to formalize the recognition of your grandmother. So
Okay.
when you create a badge, when you like a tweet, it is a formalization. So the question, something can be more or less formal.
Okay, great.
Anyone else have any questions?
Or critiques means, I mean, I think it's not just question. I think it would be very interesting to have your views and.
I was just going to suggest, at the risk of taking up the oxygen in the room, we have fairness commissioners in Canada. So we have one in Manitoba, we have one in Ontario, and I think the commissaire André Gariepi sees himself as a ombudsman in Quebec. So I'm wondering if that's something to add to the title, somebody to speak to power, speak plainly to power.
Maybe so.
Well, we can start from the role, for example. What do you think of the idea of a recognition officer or within organizations? Well, if you go, I give you the link to the in the chat.
Actually, oh, sorry, Susan's got a question.
Let's maybe finish this thread because I'm going to introduce another one. So I can hold on for a moment.
If I can just slip in, instead of an entire role, how about a skill set that would be part of other roles? And that would feed into, a manager as being an advisor for their worker or something, for their career, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes. I think what is pleasant with a role, you can imagine things being done by that person, but then you can have people who have multiple roles. So I give you the link to the framework, and if you go at the very end of the framework, there is an example of a recognition officer describing what a recognition officer would do. So it's a person who is responsible for initiating, supporting, and documenting the implementation of open and contextualized recognition practices within the organization. So it's just one, but I agree with you. I think what we want is a skill set that could be used by even every employee should have a certain skill set because they contribute to the recognition ecosystem. They contribute to the recognition of others. So when you have peer recognition, you activate a number of skills. And what is interesting, if you can make them explicit, this is what we try to do here.
And Serge, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like if you have these recognition officers or the go-to person that has those skills, it just makes it so much easier for everyone else.
That's what I imagine, yes.
Mm-hmm. Susan, did you want to ask yours? And then Tennille, I know you had one too, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, it's not so much a question, more as an observation. And Sarah, every time I hear you speak, I just feel so lucky because you take my blinders and you help expand them and to look at this from a much more holistic, much more organic way. And that whole point around recognition is such a vital need for everybody in all different places. And for me personally, I come from a very linear thought about I guess using your words, the macro, the structures, the university. How can we validate this learning, this understanding, this knowledge? And whenever you speak about the importance to the micro and to the meso, the formal, the non-formal, the semi-formal, it just helps expand it. And I think I just want to thank you for this and for this contribution. I want to recognize you, I guess, for this. And to help us stretch our understandings and to do better work wherever we're working. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Suzanne.
Danielle?
Sure. My question is related to what Susan was talking about. I am doing work in Saskatchewan. My research is on immigrant experience, considering prior learning assessment and recognition at Saskatchewan post-secondaries. And my question for you is, I love your what your section in your document where it says what this typology reveals. In the sense, it says it avoids establishing implicit hierarchies. And I guess my question is, how do we make recognition work within existing hierarchies? Because that is what I'm finding. Not only that HR or like the people in charge of the hiring are not equipped or like don't have the competencies of your recognition officer, for example, but maybe not even want to have them. So how to make this work within an already existing hierarchy, organization that is hierarchical.
But even in organizations that are hierarchical, there is recognition working. It's just the model they have is hierarchical. What we try to when we think about open recognition, the idea is not to say that there is no hierarchy. It's just to, for example, we had conversation with colleagues. We tried to define open recognition as opposed to certification and accreditation. Well, the idea, no, it's one thing. It is how you have a continuum between all this, between informal, semi-formal, and formal recognition. So you are not obliged to go through formal recognition in order to be recognized. And I think this is the main problem with UNESCO today, is that for UNESCO, only formal recognition has value. There is no space at all for informal or semi-formal. And so my take is to say that there is an educator in France. He's dead now, but it was André de Peretti. There is a movie from Louis Buñuel, L'Ange Exterminateur, where there is a kind of a drama within a mansion after an evening at the opera, and everybody believes that the doors are closed, that they are enclosed into the house and they can't escape from this house. Okay, there are many things happening during the movie because it is Buñuel, and until one young girl turned the knob of the door, and the door was always open. And I think this Buñuel syndrome, I've seen it again and again at work, but also in education. And so what I try to do with the work on the framework is we all have the power to recognize, and we should use it. And so I made a post on LinkedIn about a thought experiment on the concept of recognition capital. Mm-hmm. And the thought experiment goes like this: is imagine that you have two people with no recognition capital at all, okay? And one person recognizes the other, suddenly, and the person accepts the recognition. That means that the recognition capital of both has increased. By how much, we don't know. It's just enough to know that it has increased. And the person who has been recognized now does something she wouldn't have done hadn't she been recognized? That means that recognizing the other is creating the conditions for empowerment. It's also the way to act on the world. So by recognizing someone, I act on the world. So you could say, oh, I act through a proxy. It is, but it is real action on the world. So what I want to see is recognition as power, and to reclaim that power, and that people and communities, organization reclaim that power. And don't believe that the power is into the hands of authority. That's why there is this manifesto for open recognition, which is, the gist of it is really reclaim the power to recognize. Because once you reclaim that power, once you use it, you can it's an instrument for your own emancipation through the emancipation of others, because you start by recognizing others. So it's not about me, I want to be recognized. Oh, I'm not recognized. It's such a pity I'm not recognized. I'm such a good person. I would like to be recognized. If you want to be recognized, hey, start by recognizing others. My mother told me when I was young, tell me, dis-moi qui tu fréquentes, je te dirai qui tu es. Tell me who are your friends, I tell you who you are. And I transform that into, tell me who you recognize, I tell you who you are. And so you can create your own identity through recognizing others. Well, this is what happens with stars and football stars. It's a way to create your identity through the recognition of others. So sometimes you can tell much more of someone by who that person recognizes than through the recognition she would have received, the certificate, the diploma, and all that. So the idea to make visible who we recognize and why we recognize them would tell a lot in a resume.
April Dawn?
I feel like everything you say is like a mic drop. My mind just keeps expanding. So within this context of being a neophyte to this conversation compared to yourself and others, I've been looking into the Lisbon Recognition Convention here in Ontario, Canada. Our government in Canada has signed on and said we agree that recognition versus equivalency is very important, and agree by signing on to the Lisbon Recognition Convention that we should be doing something because we're legally binding ourselves to do something about moving towards, recognition versus equivalencies. And that's just within our own institution. So to your point, maybe more at that macro level. But if I may, I would love your thoughts on, where are you trying to get audience with this? What insights have you gleaned over the time of doing this that tends to get people engaged in wanting the conversation with you? Because I loved your statement around these locked doors, and let's not let them be locked, to Paula's point, but like let's keep opening them and testing to see if they're open. So any thoughts on the Lisbon Recognition Convention and how to get more audience?
Which is very, very nice is that in France, the French chapter of ISO, AFNOR, is publishing a norm, a standard on open recognition. So the fact that it is, it sounds a bit like an oxymoron to try to standardize something that we don't want to standardize too much, but at the same time, we need, if you think that you need to protect informal recognition like you want to protect the primal forest. So you can publish a standard on how to protect informal. So I think what the work done with the standard is a bit like how to protect and revive informal recognition to give it more value. So this is an instrument for that. And if it is adopted by the French chapter of ISO, maybe we can push it at the European or international level. And I don't say it is a solution, but it is a way to open conversations. And for example, we came up with the concept of open recognition, and on the standard we are developing, we call that. This is difficult because in French we can change the place of adjectives, and it is. In French we say dispositif ouvert de reconnaissance instead of dispositif de reconnaissance ouverte. This is the idea. Open recognition is a combination of open practices, open systems and technologies, and open policies. This is the thing about open. So it was very important when we were developing the standard in French to say dispositif ouvert de reconnaissance instead of dispositif de reconnaissance ouverte, like as if open recognition was a full, well-defined concept. I think it is a very fuzzy concept, but which can be understood through its incarnations. So maybe it's a bit mystical the way to say it, but there is open recognition, something very, very fuzzy, but there is open systems, open technologies, open practices, open policies. And this is one of the criticisms I formulated to one of a research center of the European Commission, which published a document about the 10 dimensions of open education. And what was very interesting in the way they produced this document about the 10 dimensions of open education, maybe 3 or 4 of the dimensions were open. So this is, if you have a strategy for open recognition, this strategy should be open itself. If the strategy for open recognition is not open, then it becomes some kind of a oxymoron. So what is important for us is really to hence this beginning of a framework that needs to be worked on, and we need support to finish it. And we hope to finish it in a few weeks, because I think everything is there. We know all these things. It's just a way to formalize things we already know and already practice. It's not something which is radically new. These things exist, but they might be marginal, but they exist.
Lots and lots of food for thought. Anyone else? Serge, anything else to add? There's so much going on in the chat, I can't keep up.
So going back to hierarchy, the idea of recognition is also maybe to accept some kind of yes. Can we have no hierarchy? There is a hierarchy when you're an apprentice and then you're a master. Hierarchy doesn't mean necessarily privilege. I think that is maybe the confusion.
Dawn, did you want to add something?
Just a sort of a practical consideration. This is a draft, Serge,
Yeah,
and
total draft, yes.
and I think you would welcome input from others if people see gaps or if they see red flags or if they think there are clarifications that are necessary. How could people contribute to this?
They just have to ask, and we give them access, and they can.
So request edit access when you're on the document.
Yeah.
That should be enough. Okay.
Yes. Yes, because now it's public for reading, so it's people can claim. And so what we'll try to do, if you look at the beginning, we have authors, contributors. We are very flexible about who wants to be an author. The difference between author and contributor, I think it's for the person to define the level of input. And if someone is too modest for the input, maybe we'll push to say, no, you're more than a contributor, you are a co-author.
So how can you explain to people how this will be socialized at Epic?
Epic, there will be a round table. There will be two round tables on Thursday. One round table will be about the recognition function, how we can develop the recognition function in organizations. And the second one will be about the professionalization of recognition practices. Again, if I think about the great work that CAPLA does for recognition of prior learning, a lot of it today, if I'm correct, is about helping people to get qualifications. So if you look at that, would be in the upper right corner. And I think the idea to train people into RPL is a great idea. To have a qualification for RPL practitioner is a great idea. But I think it would be a greater idea if this recognition of prior, this recognition function was within organization to help to recognize the people, the practices within the organization or within a sector, not just in order to get a qualification. I think this is but at the same time, all the work you have done on this can be extremely useful to inform the framework. And so basically, it's how to transfer all the knowledge you have, all the experience you have in recognition of prior learning into the workplace to foster, to develop semi-formal recognition that might lead to formal recognition if people want it, if there are the structures for it, but that you don't wait for formal recognition in order to be recognized.
I love it. I go between the world of HR and career development because I don't work directly with the college. I work more with military and veteran spouses.
Yeah.
And I feel like you and I need to chat because when I read through, and I did put the link to your LinkedIn article, and when what I've seen today in the conversation, I'm very excited because I feel that even participants taking a course in how to develop and recognize their own greatness, it helps everybody else too. And working on the HR side of the fence and filling up that HRIS system with all of the great stuff and seeing people get hired in to present to you about the stuff you already learn and what it does to staff is so awful. And, again, looking in the comments about the ROI for RPL is huge. And I feel like CAPLA needs to, grab on and very, very thankful for today. That being said, I have to escape because I have a meeting with my funder, so I can keep going. Thank you so much, Serge. Thank you, my team, for backing me up. And thank you, everyone, for showing up and your great questions. And I look forward to hearing the recording. And just very thankful here.
Thank you very much for inviting me and looking forward to continue working with you.
Perfect. Yeah. Please keep the conversation going. I'm going to just disappear and it's all good. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, Paula and I can sort of take over sort of moderating, facilitating. So the conversation doesn't have to stop just because Liz goes, although she is the linchpin of the community of learning. That was a recognition, by the way. Yeah. I'm just sort of putting something in the chat. Tennille.
Yeah, I've just maybe it's a silly question, but I'm also a school board trustee with our local school division, and we have a teacher shortage. And so the union is hiring temporary teaching or administering temporary teacher permits to people that have expertise in a particular area, right? But they don't have necessarily bachelor's of education degrees. And so I brought up the idea of recognition, and I said it would be really great if we could recognize their learning as they are teachers in the classroom, with the idea of maybe perhaps towards a teaching certificate or credits towards. And it was crickets in the room. And so I recognized how much like they understand and like the idea, but the how piece was almost an impossibility. And so I'm curious what would be a not a quick how, because I like love the idea of this, like really taking this framework and implementing it full on into an organization. But how do I get a little win with the group in a way that is like not a ton of legwork? Because me as a board member, I can't go into the sandbox of the administrators to do the work for them, if that makes sense. There's a very gray area there. So I'm trying to like, how do I do that? Any ideas? I'm open to any ideas.
Well, what I tend to use as idea is partir en reconnaissance. It's I not found a good equivalent in English for partir en reconnaissance. Is someone bilingual? Yeah. So for the teachers, for the future, the subject matter expert that become a teacher, ils partent en reconnaissance. They are going to explore a new world, and through this exploration, they will activate and develop a number of skills. So it's all natural that if they act in the capacity of a teacher, that there is a discovery part, and then when they found their way, they can be recognized for what they have been able to recognize. So I think there is probably what is the attitude of a subject matter expert who is going to teach?
Right. What I really wanted to do was map and provide or develop a competency framework for like that is not obvious in our province. Using like eCampus Ontario's toolkit, I did it for a different province and develop that out so that then we can start mapping the things that they're learning along the way. But it would be an enormous project. But I'm seeing in the chat that some people are piloting like advanced standing, or that there's at the very beginning discussions on an articulation with the post-secondaries. Is that what I'm seeing? Because they're absolutely, you're right, so developing skills as they're there, and it would be a shame to not maximize on that opportunity. And it would feel, I would imagine, if I were one of them, for example, or someone I knew was one of them, and they did that work and then they were no longer allowed to do it again, or I just think there's a missed opportunity there. Maybe. Anyway, sorry, I'm taking up too much time.
No, but there are many missed opportunities. We have someone working for Reconnaître, and he was a teacher. He was a very good teacher. The parents loved him, the pupils loved him, the director of the school loved him, but he didn't have a qualification. And he had like 3 years to get a qualification, didn't get it. So he had to stop to be a teacher, a job he loved and where he was loved by everybody. So this is where the system is wrong. So I think if you are practicing as a teacher, you must be developing teacher competencies. Means it's kind of obvious. So if we are not able to recognize this, we have a problem. And the problem is with us, is not with the teacher, primarily.
I totally agree. Yeah. But when I talk about it and speak about it, I think the perception is, oh my gosh, this is going to be a lot of work that we are going to have to do. That's what I'm hearing. But maybe I can look into other avenues that would solve multiple problems versus just the one problem. And then maybe, yeah, I'll think on it.
April?
Yeah, thanks so much. I was actually, along the same lines as Tennille, because I'm working on a project right now that is about recognizing work experience or, the non-traditional learning through the Ontario Qualifications Framework credentialing system for people who do have like knowledge and skills and experience, but don't have the quick transfer credit that you can look syllabus to syllabus, right? Or what have you. And so I think, this talk and the questions is really helping solidify like how important these conversations are. Like we have a productivity problem. We have challenges with innovation. We have, a number of things happening, in our own provinces and municipalities, let alone in Canada. And I think this is where this conversation is bolstering me to be reminded of, like, or the mic drop of like, look at all the work that's happening outside of Canada. Amazing. And then how do we continue to foster these discussions in earnest here, even with everything that's going on in higher ed and in education right now. This is so insightful.
Don?
So,
Sorry.
Tennille, if you want to reach out, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to put you in contact with the person I talked to for the programming, because I can't take credit. She's done all the work, but I'll put you in contact with them.
Don?
So just in terms of connecting with other networks, we had the Groningen Declaration Network come to EPIC last year with ACRAO, the American Registrar Association, and coming out of that, I was invited to was it in May for this PCCAT Groningen Declaration Common conference they had in northern Toronto, and so we were sort of introducing those concepts there, and uptake I'm not sure, but at least I didn't have anything thrown at me in the room. So it's maybe something to work on. So Anne-Marie Lysang was there, Joanne Duclas was there, people like that, as well as a number of others as well, who in various provinces who are trying to move this forward. And I was just talking to Alberta, for example, who are running a forum late, I guess, just after EPIC for their micro-credential framework that they're coming up with. And I was, again, expressing these ideas. And interestingly, the guy from SAIT says, oh, I come from South Africa, so these things are really important to me. I said, well, Julie Reddy from SACWA was our keynote at the 2023. So I think that made an impression. I think it's just, you just got to, it's the drip, drip, drip. You just have to keep on repeating yourself.
Okay, I'm gonna call on Andy because I've got my hand up like a good boy. It's just a response to Neil. I mean, if you've got people that are sort of working in a classroom and there's other people that are recognized educators, they then can become the sort of mentors, the evaluators. All the good stuff doesn't happen at universities in teacher education. It happens in the classroom. It's a practice. It's a bit like doctors. They do the university stuff, then they really learn how to do the jobs when they're actually in the hospitals, taking that theoretical information and operationalizing it. So, I mean, I would just sort of say, well, you got people there that are already recognized. Trust them. You gave them the qualification. They become not the they sort of are evaluators, but much more importantly, they should be mentors and guiders and like it's a partnership where this person's being brought up to, not brought up, being recognized for the work that they're already doing. And I don't think it's difficult. If you go into a classroom and there's a really good teacher in there, you need 30 seconds to know that they're a really good teacher, because all the people in there are on task and they're working and they're engaged and they're happy and they're smiling and they're communicating with each other and everything's organized. You really don't need a lot of time to be able to recognize loads of different things that are going on well, and the opposite of that if it's done poorly. Yeah, so the classroom itself is the evaluation, the recognition context.
Absolutely. Well, I think it would be. I would like to reflect with you on the idea to develop a network of recognition practitioners. Because at the end, it's always the members of the community of practice who recognize the practitioners. That doctors recognize doctors, butchers recognize butchers. So there is no crossover between the two, hopefully. So imagine now that we create this community of practice of recognition practitioners. And then we would have the authority to validate the recognition of individuals within organizations or within a community, within a municipality, without being an awarding body. So it wouldn't have the same value of an awarding body, which would be a formal qualification, but that would be a recognition by a professional who is qualified to assessor, to the term for that. Don't you think that would be the possibility that would? I think there is a need for that. The question is it something that would be feasible, desirable, to create this layer of recognition professionals?
Danielle?
I love that idea. You just gave me an idea because I was snooping on the SPTRB. I think that's what it is, STBBRB, the certification teachers group, and I was trying to find like the learning outcomes or like how you get your certification and be validated. So I could absolutely see how that group could then certify assessors, maybe retired teachers, to then do this work, and it wouldn't be an astronomical amount of money, I don't think, but I mean, I think it's doable, or it would be a cool pilot in one school division. But I think, yeah, I would have to sort of feed the idea right to the group that would be in charge of doing the work. But maybe you'd be able to supply them with the idea and the kind of how it could happen. But yeah, if we know the group and have the experts and employ those too. And in a lot of cases, I've met many teachers where I'm like, oh, I just want that person to stay around forever because they just positively infect everything, right? Like they just are these master teachers, and that would be such a great way to get them back into the school as mentors, as positive influences as assessors and all the things. I think that you gave me a really good idea. So I think it is a good idea anyway, maybe. I don't know.
Don?
If I can just sort of add to that, it occurs to me that there's stuff you can do that can be overlaid on top of the regulatory entry to profession stuff, so that you could have like a semi-formal layer on top that's somewhat related to the idea of, okay, there's entry to profession, but what about mid-profession? What about specialization within the profession, which isn't always very well developed in the professions, so that you could have something that would be, dealing with First Nations. That was something that BC Campus was experimenting with open badges way back in the day. It's great. You got the College of Nurses or whatever, and you've got that license, but what about this? And it's kind of like that. That semi-formal actually fits really well in this regard, because you could have a lot of structure to it, and or you could have it be a lot more sort of what's the word, organic, and peer connective.
Come on, guys, don't be shy. You've got Serge here. Use him.
Je ne muse que si on ne se sert pas de moi.
So, Serge, one of the, had a comment about this earlier on. And a lot of this, the personalization, how would you deal with the personalization paradox, where the recognition of an individual as an individual, how they're developing as an individual, is the most important thing. But organizations like UNESCO focus on the formal, because that's just so much easier to add up and make statistics about, and do benchmarking and progress tracking and stuff like this. How can open recognition scale in terms of observing impact and knowing what works and what doesn't work, if it's just all so many individual stories that you have to dig into the story to figure out what it is, it's being recognized and who this person is?
I don't think there are individual stories. I think we have intertwined stories. So I proposed a thought experiment a few years ago. At the time we were working together on ePortfolio, and it was the following experiment. Imagine that you have an SME with 100 people, and you have a very good piece of software, very advanced, to write your own CV. And what I proposed is that if 10 people write their own CV with this very good piece of software, at the end, when they finished writing their own CV, they would have also written the CV for their coworkers, and maybe between 20 and 80%. Why? Because I did something, I did it with Marie or Paul or Ahmad. And so each time you state something you have done within the organization, it is very likely you have done it with other people. And so if you tell your story, at the same time, you tell the story of other people. It's impossible to tell your own story without having any connection to other people.
But how does that scale up into like countries and regions and jurisdictions?
It's systems theory. It's just systems theory is what Serge is talking about. And it just, I mean, on the one level it's very complex, on another level, it's really quite simple. And that's all I'm going to say. Serge and I think alike. We know that.
And the other thing also about the individual, we had a conversation in a previous meeting. When we think all recognition systems is based on the individual, and I think something I've not mentioned earlier, but I think that should be more present in the framework, is the articulation between individual and community recognition. That is, when a member of a community is being recognized, it has a positive impact on the community as a whole. So this time it's not a thought experiment. Well, it is, but it is something that we can imagine is possible to do very easily, is when a person shows a badge to an employer. I hate this kind of example, but it works here. People said, oh, what is important is the metadata in the badge, what the person has done. But I think what is most important is to be able to see how many people have the same badge, how many of these badges have led to employment, how many of these badges have been endorsed. And so when you show your badge, what you show is an entry point into a web of recognition. Just like on the internet, at the beginning of the internet, when you went onto a website, good websites were like hubs, starting point to explore more of the web. And so there were two types of internet sites at the beginning. There were internet sites that were like hubs, and internet sites that were like pits. Once you were in, you couldn't go out. And there was a kind of a French website at the beginning tended to be a bit like a pit. You went in, couldn't go out. Anglo-Saxon, okay, it's a bit of a caricature, but there was something a bit like that to see in the organization of the website. And for me, a good badge, or let's say a good recognition token, is an entry point into a network of recognition. It should be that. But unfortunately, the technology, the way it has been developed, the way it is treated, it is like there is no connection at all. Also, if you think about the articulation between individual and community recognition, that means that once I've been employed, I have no interest to have my badge being endorsed. I got the job. Why would I ask the badge to be endorsed? But if I think that I'm a member of a community, having my badge endorsed by the employer in the system I propose to develop would give value to all the other badges, will help someone who is presenting a badge to get a job to say, hey, you see, this badge has been recognized. That means this badge has value, so I have value. And so this articulation between individual and community recognition should be really embedded into the system. So it's not always about me, but it's about nous. And as I say in French, kind of a pun, it is l'articulation du je nous, which is okay for people speaking French, they will understand, but it is a pun. Je, I, nous, us, and genou, the knee.
Sorry. I like that. So the leg bone's connected to the knee bone. I like that. So,
Eric.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was late. I had another meeting that went really long. I think I've sort of picked up what we're talking about here, and I hear a lot that seems relevant to my work and the challenges that I'm currently trying to solve right now. And I'm just thinking about the issue of recognition and systems and how to get buy-in, how to scale up. And so, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a policy analyst with Skilled Trades Ontario. So we're the professional regulator for the trades in Ontario, and so I'm basically working with the Registration Services Department and on the foreign qualification recognition framework. So the issue that we actually just inherited this responsibility of registering apprentices and doing prior learning assessment recognition in April of this year. And so a lot has been sort of revealed to us in terms of why there's been a lack of recognition for foreign qualifications. It seems that there has been this, talking about scale, it used to be that foreign qualifications were assessed only in Ontario and at one of 25 area offices throughout the provinces. So individual employment training consultants working with the Ministry of Labor would do an assessment, and then they might assess let's just say hypothetically, an electrical engineering degree from a university in India, and they would grant level credit. They would grant advanced standing in an apprenticeship so that the person doesn't have to do 2/3 of the levels of apprenticeship training. So they would be basically exempt from having to do level 1 and level 2 of a 3-level electrician apprenticeship. And so they would grant that person credit, but then they wouldn't add that degree program to a list so that other people who have finished that degree program would be able to get the same recognition. And so there are degrees and there are diplomas which sometimes they get recognized, sometimes they don't get recognized. It depends on what office you go to, depends on what training consultant is available that day. The fact that they weren't taking that next step of scaling it up to the provincial level in a way that everyone can get recognition is something that we've been witnessing. So we're trying to change that now. Whenever we recognize foreign qualification, we're now adding that name to we're adding that degree program, that diploma program, to a list so that anybody else applies with that same diploma, that degree, gets the same recognition. And so that's an example of how we are scaling up. Mm-hmm. But then the problem that we're running into is that we, as a regulatory body, we lack the capacity to do all of these, right? And so this idea of having a network of prior learning professionals, it sounds very appealing to me, people that we could even call upon to do this work for us, because we have 144 trades. And there are hundreds of colleges and universities throughout the world that are, the reason that this hasn't happened yet is because we would need hundreds of people doing prior learning assessment recognition in order to make it workable, in order to make it scalable. Because can you imagine what would happen if the word gets out that Skilled Trades Ontario is in the business of assessing foreign qualifications? For years, the ministry has done it off the sides of their desks in a way that makes it easy to manage because of capacity related issues. They've almost been intentionally, I hope I'm not telling tales out of school here, almost been intentionally preventing it from scaling up because it might be a victim of its own success in terms of how many of these they have to do, right? They find it just easier to not do assessments. It's kind of, I joke that the way the ministry was doing it was non-PLAR. It was basically the non-assessment, non-recognition framework. They almost seem to be going out of their way to not do assessments. And then sometimes they might tell the applicant to go and get World Education Services to do an assessment, but they don't assess any trades, diplomas, or degrees. WES specifically will not assess any college or diploma or degree if it's trades related, because they basically just say, oh, we're not in that business. Go talk to the regulatory body, right? And so there really is a lack of people out there that I can call upon, that we can call upon to do curriculum mapping, of taking that foreign qualification and mapping it against our training standard or curriculum standard. So it's fallen to me, and I've been doing it off the side of my desk. I mean, I am not a prior learning assessment recognition expert. I'm an economist. I'm a policy analyst. And so, but I've been doing 2 or 3 of these every day. For an out of province applicants, out of country qualifications. And so there's literally no one out there, no companies, no independent professionals. There appears to be nobody out there that can help us with these things. But if such a network did exist, I think we would definitely utilize them. But because we also can't rely on the colleges to do these prior learning assessments either, because there's a bit of a conflict of interest there. Why would they grant credit? Why would they do a prior learning assessment for an applicant when they could make money off of them? These are the same colleges. They're losing every applicant's prior where they recognize prior learning is one less student paying tuition, right? And so there's an inherent conflict of interest in outsourcing this work to the colleges and universities. Not to say that they wouldn't be able to, or we wouldn't be able to manage that conflict somehow, but I think that I'm not sure if I'm on the talking about the right kind of issues here, or if any of that is relevant or useful. But I thought it sounded like it might be, so I thought I would say it and share that.
Yeah, thank you. That's very.
I don't know who was first, so fight it out.
Well, I was just going to say one very short comment, and then to Neil and April Dawn can go. I was just going to say CAPLA is trying real hard, Eric, to put together a project, and as I mentioned in the chat, looking at a Canadian credit and qualifications framework, which basically does that, right? That does that consolidation of what's out there. Not a small job by any stretch of the imagination. And we had applied for funding but weren't successful for the first stages of that, but we haven't forgotten. So stand by with any luck.
Okay, good.
To Neil, April, fight it out.
I'll go, I guess. Well, if that's okay, April. I'm worried I'm going to forget is what that's what's going to happen if I wait too long. Eric, to your point, I've asked to be sort of a fly on the wall for a project that's happening in Saskatchewan with the dental technologist something group who have taken on a PLAR project themselves. And it made me wonder, like, if post-secondaries don't and industry don't kind of partner up on some of these things, then people are going to say, the accrediting bodies are going to say, forget it then. We'll just do it ourselves and we'll hire the assessors ourselves. And I really don't want to see that happen. I think that there's a real benefit to that collaboration. And the other thing is, in my research on immigrants considering PLAR in Saskatchewan, almost all of them had gotten WES and had a positive WES assessment and had zero bearing on whether or not they could get employment. It was much more tied to could they continue studies in Saskatchewan than it was to could they get employment, because the employers didn't really care, in all honesty, particularly if they were a licensing body. So that's unfortunate. And I recently saw there's been like a surge of, and I'm not discrediting WES. I think there's a lot of space and need for that work. But there was an ad I saw on Facebook recently talking about how WES could help you achieve your dreams or something. It was such an unusual, like, I'd never seen that before. And I wondered like what the purpose of that was, because at least in my research, nobody benefited from having their credentials assessed through WES, unfortunately. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen. I'm just saying in my case, it didn't happen.
April.
Thanks, Andy. I should say my first name's April Dawn. But yeah, I'm listening to a lot of these, and it sounds like, there's a powerhouse of people in this call with ideas and information. And let's say maybe a truck full of frustration because we've tried so many different things. But this is, I think, really motivating me to see the collective energy people are wanting to put towards this, again and again. So I guess one of the things that I'm working on right now too is how to, if we allow, faculty to teach, and they maybe, don't have the terminal credential, but an exception can be made. And I know some of you put in the chat that other institutions have stopped doing this, but if we allow individuals to teach in post-secondary that don't have a PhD, but have 10 to 15 years work experience, and they can teach semester 1 or semester 2, why can't we grant credit, advanced standing, bulk PLAR, whatever the case might be, for a learner who has 5 to 10 years experience? And I think there's some frameworks out there that say, when the model applies over here for teaching, why can't the model apply for, a student? And thoughtful. Like, I'm not saying, I used to run quality, and I've said, I'm not saying we don't look at rigor, but the buy-in, I think, comes from, some of us feeling like our identity is wrapped up in, well, my expertise is so important, I have to teach the student. I have to, convey my knowledge to them. There's no way they could have learned that in the workplace. And holding on to some of that is unfortunately a challenge right now. But hopefully the more we push, that can be a bygone era and say, you know what, recognition is recognition. Let's look at how we can use some of these models to help us. So thank you so much for keeping me motivated as we hit some walls.
Cool. Any other comments or I think I have a question, Sergius. How can we support your work? How can CAPLA and our community support your work? You've given us, we got the link to the document. We can email stuff to our membership, our wider emailing list, but obviously the timing's got to be right for you. So how can we support you and the work you're doing and the team?
Well, if you find it interesting, is to contribute to it and use it.
Sure. So would you like us
or
to
tell me what you would need, to be able to use it? I'd talk with a colleague. I say, okay, give me some prompts for ChatGPT, and I'll try to do to satisfy the prompts. So yes,
Sure.
you can prompt me or you can use it. I think the idea to create a committee of practice of recognition practitioners, having as the core for Canada people who have been involved in PLA, would be, I think, a great way to move forward for me. To have an international organization, network, this can be quite informal, as a way to create a different situation. I think we need these recognition professionals, these recognition practitioners, to move to the next stage.
Yeah, I mean, that idea, that was the thing. It's like every organization, everything, you have a person with something like recognition in their name or title or recognized as that person, and that raises the awareness of recognition that's already happening, so it permeates through and becomes just a normal part of life, communities, organizations, businesses, education.
Yeah. It's become a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It means if you have someone in charge of recognition, then something will happen. It's like a catalyst, accelerating the chemical reaction. Yeah.
It's a vacuum to fill. Can I suggest that we look at rolling this into the certificates and certification work that RPL is doing, where we're talking about having RPL practitioners, typically in post-secondary, but had already been talking about going beyond that. We just have this maybe is currently in an annex, but maybe pick up the conversation in Paris, pick up the conversation again at Epic Canada in 2026, whenever that happens, and just figure out a way that we can make our work with the Certificates and Certification Initiative align with what we've been talking about today. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, my concern was just, I know that you're going to present this. This is sort of like an input session, and you're working towards presenting at Epic. I don't want to do anything that you tell us what you need from CAPLA and tell us when you need it, and we'll do everything we can to try and make that happen. So the time has got to be right for you and the authors of this fantastic work.
But it can be also the other way around, is what do you need? So, sorry, because in a sense, it's work for you. So it's a gift for you, something you can use. So
absolutely. But I mean, I want to share it with the widest community possible. so it has the widest impact possible. I was just concerned about the timing, but I can get an email out saying, "Hey, you need to see this video, and you need to read this thing," and then I would send it to you first, and you could add your own bits, what you would like. So people going in and maybe giving you feedback on the document and how to do that. And then we get it out to our widest community, and we can put it on LinkedIn and everything. But again, it's got to be, you've got to okay the process. That's the only thing I'm concerned about.
I'm just a steward here. Seriously.
No, I agree. No, I was just laughing about your very openness, and you're willing to share, and it's indicative of your whole ethos, I think, and your approach to this. So thank you, Serge.
Well, it can't be otherwise, or there would be some kind of a.
It would be a bit hypocritical.
Yeah.
Cool.
But the thing is, I believe that if